Yo, what is going on, guys? It's Toy here. And for today's video, I wanted to go into something a little bit in-depth in a way. I haven't done a lore video in a long time, and I figured what better than to get into a lore video before the the new release for the little dungeon type 30th anniversary event. So I thought we would take a look into what has happened with all of the fallen houses. So we're going to be going all over each one of the fallen houses. That's including House of Devils, House of Kings, House of Judgment, and so on and so forth. So let's dive right into it. So for the first fallen house that we're going to be going over is the House of Wolves. And for this house, it was resided in the Reef, serving as loyalists to Queen Marasov. Vandals acted as royal guards next to the queen on her throne. The wolves killed Virex and was killed by the queen's forces during the Reef Wars, and the house was plunged into a civil war over who should take the Kelship. The three factions were led by Skolas, Irxis, and Perix. If I'm saying those names incorrectly, I'm sorry. Although the house was crippled and manipulated, the queen's forces began to search for the prime of the house, Calyx. At some point, Skolas led an uprising against the queen's forces and began a campaign to control the other fallen houses. The notable members are Beltric, Drevis, Greyer, Urxix, Calyx 12, Calyx Prime, Meteor Orbix 11, Perix, Peaks, Persis, Savix, Skolas, Scorix, Velinx, Berxis, Wexis, Yevik. And those are some of the notable members / leaders of the fallen houses. For the House of Wolves, having been nearly wiped out by the deaths of their leaders and the lieutenants from the subsequent Guardian hunts, the House of Wolves were driven into the brink. Terrifying Scorn Baron, known as Rexus Von, the Hangman, subsequently hunted down and destroyed the last remaining servitors, dooming the former Great House of Wolves off of its ether supply. With the demise of the servitors, former wolf members assimilated into the House of Dusk, including Scrivix the Sharp-Eyed, the Silent Fang, Queen Breakers, Palace Siege Breakers, and those affiliated with Beltric and Urxis. During the Prison of Elders outbreak, one vandal still wearing the colors of the House of Wolves saluted Varix the Loyal for releasing all the inmates. Upon discovering that Marasov is still alive, Yevik, a former wolf now working with the House of Dusk, began plotting a return to his former wolf Kel, who he is still loyal to. Later, former wolves joined Aramis' cause to form the House of Salvation, hoping to ensure the Darkness Kel's dream to destroy the Traveler for abandoning her people. So, for the next house is going to be House of Scar. The House of Scar is only mentioned briefly by Varix the Loyal, as a house that came into conflict with the House of Winter after the Whirlwind destroyed fallen civilization. Its current status is unknown. However, Scar has been briefly mentioned and to have been dust alongside the extinct houses. For the information for these houses that are extinct, it's House of Scar, then you have House of Stone, and House of Rain. And all of these have somewhat no to none of information about them, which is kind of upsetting. But the leadership for House of Stone is Kelkix, Kel of Stone, which is deceased. And I mean, the only notable information that they give you is they fought against Oryx the Taken King, which, if you didn't know that is one of the big mean bad guys who is a big part into the Destiny story. House of Rain doesn't really have that much information as well. It was only briefly talked to us by Varix, which he reads as followed: House of Rain, lost in Whirlwind, no survivors, but I keep their prophecies. And then it reads as for a description: the House of Rain was a fallen house distinguishable by their dark purple cloaks and armor, regarded as the lowest noble house in the aftermath. Cataclysmic Whirlwind, they were once believed by Varix to have been destroyed, but later revealed they had survived and reached Sol. The house massacred a human settlement on Mercury and came into conflict with the Vex, the Titan Saint 14, and the Guardian, who had traveled back in time. Years later, Saint 14 led an offensive against the Rain called Weapons of Rain, which may have been their demise. But even though the House of Rain may have been destroyed in the Whirlwind, the purple banners that they used were adopted by the House of Dusk. So for the next house we're going to be looking at is the House of Judgment, which is a big one because this one is basically revolving around Varix the Loyal, the one that what we know is basically the kind of traitor in a way that, well, someone is responsible for the death of Kate 6. But the House of Judgment is one of the oldest fallen houses. The only known living member of this house, Varix, currently resides on Yorba. This house's colors is light green. As the events of Forsaken, the House of Judgment has somewhat been rebuilt by Varix using various fallen prisoners who he has released from the Prison of Elders. Their current goal is to reunite all remaining houses and factions within the Fallen and return to the traditional ways of the Elixni before the Whirlwind. So, for the first main house, instead of House of Wolves being basically notable factions of what it's like originally called, but the first house that we're going to be taking a look at is the House of Winter, and this is one of the many houses of the Fallen Army. And the history for this reads as follows. While the House of Winter's headquarters are unknown, they are currently present on Venus. Along the Shattered Coast and inside the Ishtar Academy, reports say that they patrol the Ishtar Sink region. Because of their interest focused on Golden Age ruins, or that their focus is directed on something else near the Vex Citadel above the Waking Ruins.
A ketch. It must belong to the House of Winter. I've never seen one on the surface. The Kel's gotta be inside.
The notable members for this fallen house is Draxus. Draxus was one of the most wanted Kel of the Fallen until he is killed in his own catch by Guardians of Earth.
There's the Kel. Draxus was one of the worst plagues this system has ever seen. Without their Kel, houses usually turn against each other. We may finally have broken their hold on the Academy.
Then Greylix was a Winter Baron until he was found and killed in the Venus Archives. Then Simic 3 was created by the Prime of the House of Winter that is rumored to have been destroyed long ago. It was uniquely equipped to store large amounts of information to link it between itself and other servitors. Now for the main house that everybody's aware of, the House of Devils. So, the House of Devils has been present on Earth since the collapse, and they were responsible for the destruction of London in the Battle of Twilight Gap. They have been called the Scourge of the City by many Guardians due to their pirating nature and constant persistence in ridding the Earth of all humanity. In their lair in Old Russia, they continue to search for something deep below Old Russia. The elders of the tower fear they may prove the city's undoing. And the notable members for this house is Aramis the Ship Stealer, which everybody knows her, Grexus Devilclaw, Karis Archon Rising, Loxus Devilclaw, Naxus Devil Baron, Ron Devil Captain, Rixus Devil Archon, Sepix Prime, Solix Devil Kel, Vargas Devil Captain. The House of Devils was basically all up in the air after the death of Sepix and all major barons slash any leader of that group until the Splicers came along, aka Siva, and basically resurrected Sepix, which made Sepix perfected, and along with Tanix the perfected, but you know how that goes. I mean, we end up killing both of them, unless, well, Tanix comes back again and Beyond Light. But then after we get to that, and we kill both Tanix and Sepix, we have one major leader left, and that is the Archon Prime, Axis, which, after the death of Axis, it didn't break the house, but it kept the house around. It still is around, but it shows a level of uniformity that the other houses do not display, so it just shows you the strength of the House of Devils. Another house to look at is House of Kings. And Ikora says, another great house hides among us. And it reads as followed. They are rarely encountered by the guardians of the last city. The House of Kings has a restricted lair in King's Watch, Old Russia. They have seemed very brutal towards the last city and other fallen houses alike. It is rare to find a king wandering outside its lair on Earth, but even rarer than to find them lurking on the Ishtar Sink of Venus. Because of their secrecy, the last city is yet to fully understand their strengths and goals. During the emergence of the Scorn, the leadership of the kings was slaughtered by Aldrin Sov in the Scorn. House of Dusk is the next one we'll be looking at, and this one is a fallen house operating on Earth, Titan, and Nessus. It reads as followed. Following the arrival of the Red Legion in the solar system, much if not of all the territory claimed by the fallen houses was taken over by Gaul and his forces, the fallen were forced out to their territories on Venus, Moon, and Mars. Even most of the Earth was facing potential extinction. Desperation succeeded in uniting the fallen houses, where other attempts had failed, such as Skolas's attempt during the House of Wolves. The House of Dusk is the result of the combination of the House of Devils, Winter, Exile, and any other stray fallen within the solar system. So the next house we're going to be looking into is the House of Exile. It's a smaller, newer house made up of the malcontents and renegades of other houses after their sparking defeat at Twilight Gap. They have attempted to carve out a realm for themselves on the surface of the moon in spite of the heavy hive presence. The Exiles serve no Kel or Archon, making them abnormal among their fallen. Which, within this house, it's mostly dregs and shanks. However, there are sometimes captains and vandals, and are occasionally present leading their inferior members. They are said to be outcasts, which all of these members of the House of Exile are basically galvanized by pride, hate, and the desire for freedom, and are willing to make bold actions in order to secure their positions. It is implied that most, if not all, the surviving exiles have now joined the House of Dusk. As of the Red War, there have been no evidence of fallen on Luna until Shadowkeep, where the House of Dusk had claimed the former territory of the House of Exile, including the former catch of Tanix. And then you have another house, which quite frankly everybody's aware of, but it's the House of Salvation, which it's the house from Aramis, the witch she made, and I don't know if you really have to go into that. I mean, I'm pretty sure if you played Beyond Light or Destiny 2 anything, it kind of gives you the backstory of what, I mean, but if you're not aware of how exactly the House of Salvation ended, it just is a small little detail for you. It's basically the Guardians used stasis to freeze Aramis, which the funny thing is the Guardians actually froze Aramis in using her own stasis power against her. However, though, Critus soon assumed leadership over the House of Salvation. She believed that she had the power to awaken Aramis. However, the Guardians soon discovered this, and Critus, alongside her prime servitor, were both killed. With this victory, House Salvation has been broken, this time permanently. And over the time, the ranks of the House Salvation would continue to deplete, with many fallen seeking to join the House of Light or the House of Dusk. And the House of Light is another house that we can basically give a little nod to. It's basically a house that is created by Mithrax and that are okay with the Guardian's powers and the Traveler, and actually worship the Traveler, unlike the House of Salvation, which basically was trying to punish the Traveler and try to take him down, because basically all the Fallen were upset with the Traveler for abandoning them on their Reese homeworld. But guys, that'll be the end for this video. I dived into pretty much all of the Fallen houses and gave you a little bit of backstory on them and their ending, if they did end. But if you guys did enjoy the video, make sure to leave a like, because it helps me a ton and gives me an idea of what type of content you guys want. But yeah, I'm going to be uploading a ton on Tuesday of this upcoming week for the Bungie 30th anniversary event, hopefully with new content, new lore, and new weapons, and so on and so forth. So yeah, it's been Toy, guys. Later.